Welcome to the World Lens podcast, where we look at what's happening around the world each week through a global business lens. I'm your host, Michelle Evans, digital specialist at the World Trade Center Institute, and I'm joined by Bruce McIndoe, president of McIndoe Risk Advisory and a WTCI board member. Hi, Bruce, how are you?
Good, doing great.
So, we're going to be tackling TikTok today. Do you have a TikTok?
Do I have a TikTok? No. This app has been, an issue in the defense and intelligence circles for a long, long time,
Mm-hmm.
and so no, it's I don't have not ever used
I
TikTok.
am guilty of having a TikTok and have actually posted several videos on there, mostly of my children.
Hmm.
Um, so what's going on? There's a lot of talk about banning TikTok, but that's really not the whole story. There was a bill passed by the House of Representatives, and it's on its way to Senate. Tell me more about this bill and what it means.
Yeah, so we'll start with the current bill, and then we can kind of talk about how we got here.
Mm,
But yeah, the current legislation as it exists, and I have not read the whole. I've just looked at summaries that were there, but I think this is consistent, and that is that it essentially tells ByteDance, who's the
hmm
company that actually owns TikTok, right, as an app, two options. One, sell TikTok or face a ban, meaning removing it from app stores and banning it from use on devices in the United States. So that's there. So if it chooses to divest so that it doesn't have to face a ban, it would then have to operate in the U.S. and if the however they're going to do this is through some kind of interagency process, and that the platform wouldn't be controlled by a foreign adversary, which is how they're terming China. So there's like this whole, okay, if they do divest, what actually happens and how is this going to be
right.
managed and why would it be any different? And those are where there's still a lot of questions as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my opinion, personally, I think it seems a bit drastic to kind of just say you either divest or you will not operate in the US. It seems similar to like the antitrust laws, but I'm not sure that
Hmm.
TikTok reaches that level of like anti competitiveness.
No, not at all. Not when there's other social media platforms.
Yeah.
But so let's talk, a little bit, just in more recent history. The Senate passed a bill a couple years ago, requiring this, the TikTok app to be removed from federal agencies, right?
Right.
And so that went through a whole process, and then as of June of last year, federal employees, state employees in like 34 out of the 50 states have been prohibited from using the app on government devices,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's out there, and that cascaded down to government contractors, especially that are doing classified work and that kind of thing. So it's actually much broader, even though it's not legally required.
Mm-hmm.
That policy is to not use this app. So that's out there at the federal and state level. But as we recall, I remember like in 2020, the then president Donald Trump issued a presidential order banning TikTok and the other Chinese messaging app called
What?
WeChat.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the U.S. And again saying that they ByteDance either needed to divest of TikTok or cease business in the U.S. So that was a presidential executive order that was put out,
But it
right?
got
So this is
rejected.
not, again, not new, right?
Right.
But there were court orders that stopped the move,
Mm-hmm.
and then when President Biden was inaugurated, he revoked that executive order just to stop all the legal activity, and basically started a fresh investigation to really look into this and decide what we should do. So this is not like just something that kind of came out of
Right.
thin air. And it's kind of where we are today. The Republicans picked up this and moved forward with legislation to accomplish what the Trump executive order was trying to do through the law,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but it's also interesting that candidate Trump, did a flip
Yeah,
flop
he
and no
definitely
longer
flipped.
supports the ban. Yeah, so that's gotten all kind of confusing on the Republican
I'm
side, but
sure it's
we are here,
because
and
of the upcoming election. It has to be.
Sure.
He needs young voters, and that's where they are, TikTok. So why is there so much fear surrounding TikTok? What is it about TikTok that makes them kind of shake in their boots?
Yeah, and and I think hopefully we'll talk about this more. But I personally think that there should be this kind of concern around all social media
Mm-hmm.
apps, and the fact that right now TikTok's kind of an easy target. But this a lot of the headlines are around the Chinese getting access to personal information. Well, I look at that as a red herring in the extreme, because pretty much any company, any foreign government, anyone can purchase troves of information on U.S. citizens legally.
Yeah.
So it's just to me not a real problem, in the sense, now the fact that all that data is out there, that's a problem, but that's way beyond this conversation. So the real concern, and my real concern about social media platforms in general, is they get to decide, when you log into that app and you interact with that app, everything that you see, they're deciding based on their algorithms what to present to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel like the real concern is, because these through these algorithms, the social media platforms can elevate misinformation, they can promote conspiracy theories, they can shape each user's little echo chamber about what they see and what's reinforced
Mm-hmm.
and who they hear from. And so that's the troubling part of it. And then from an intelligence perspective, there is potential vulnerability when you're downloading a foreign developed app onto your mobile
Mm-hmm.
device. What nefarious things might be done to get access to your contact information and other things that are on your phone that are not in the purview of you know the use of that app, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the intelligence community, and they have, and why they're not on government devices, look at a foreign adversary would likely exploit that access to your device, right? So these are the things that I think are broader. And right now, all of that conversation is focused on TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to not have it on like federal devices. That makes sense to me. But personal devices, I'm kind of up in the air. I mean, I'm pretty sure my everything is in someone's database in Beijing somewhere. But if I were an investor based in the United States, wouldn't the existence of this bill kind of scare me away from investing in anything foreign owned?
No. Again, this is very narrow, very targeted around uh, what's going on. I think there are broader issues for investors. I mean, look what's happening to Google and Facebook and
Mm-hmm.
others in Europe, right, around data privacy and other legislation in the EU. So anybody that's investing in these areas, do need to worry about, what is the legal landscape look like and how is that evolving from a regulatory perspective. But foreign direct investment, I don't think it's going to have any real impact at all.
So on the flip side, if I'm based outside the US, why would I want to break into the US market if it's going to end up being outlawed? Would that kind of hurt our economy in any kind of way?
Yeah, so that's a whole nother conversation. So if I'm a foreign entity and I'm going to go into the United States and acquire a U.S. company, there's actually a process. It's the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. actually, can evaluate that acquisition and determine whether it would potentially harm U.S. interests or other U.S. concerns, and could actually basically deny the ability for that foreign entity to acquire the company. I actually this lived through this personally. I had a company that worked heavily with the government, and a foreign entity made a purchase through the private equity company to purchase the company, and CFIUS stepped in, and because of the kind of work that we were doing with the defense and the intelligence sectors, prohibited them and forced them to divest. Once they had acquired the company, CFIUS basically said, no, we're not going to allow this. You need to
Hmm.
divest and get this back owned by a U.S. person. So there's all that process, again, from the outside coming in.
Hmm.
And I would say, it's more rigorous than what we're dealing with right now.
I can imagine. So, what happens to all the businesses on TikTok? I saw that there are like 7 million Americans who have businesses on TikTok. It's not just a video app, it's brand deals are in place. If it goes away, what happens to them?
Yeah, so that's where this political pain, right, for all the users that enjoy the app, and then all of the people that are making money from the marketplace,
Hmm.
from the app, it's a real issue. But again, it's one of those types of things that, and we saw this in India, right, when India banned TikTok, and bunch of, I don't know, 50 other
Hmm.
Chinese apps from India, but TikTok being the key one. There were, again, similarly, millions of people that were making money through TikTok,
Right.
and then essentially overnight no longer had that business. But what happened is then very quickly in the weeks and months ahead, those businesses and personalities popped up on, Instagram and other platforms, Facebook and other platforms, and were able to, regarner their followers and kind of kept on TikToking, right? Just on another platform. So it is painful. It's disruptive.
Very.
People will be annoyed and angry, but they're also, will recover on the other platforms. And then that's the counter challenge that we see in the conversation. It
Hmm.
says, oh, you're going to ban TikTok and then push more volume of business to, these other U.S. platforms,
Right.
right? So
Sounds
that's
like they'll
part of
be
the.
up for banning and regulatory things next. Seems very cyclical. So I've seen in some circles that it suggests that TikTok is a big source of information inside Palestine. Do you think that has anything to do with why this bill is being brought up now?
You know, at the top level, no, I don't think it's any major. TikTok issue, as I've said, has been around for
Right.
years. I think, the election cycle that we're in right now and where we are, definitely contributing to that. And then the growing tension with China, much like India had with their border dispute, rallies people around this. So I feel like those are bigger drivers. Is the Palestine use of the app or information from Palestine into U.S. citizen eyes and ears? Maybe it's some small component of this, but I don't think it's major.
So yeah, we briefly touched on how, if TikTok is banned, a lot of the users will go to Facebook and Twitter. They also have access to all of our data. You know, I guess is TikTok just that low hanging fruit, or will this, happen with, I'm sorry, X, not Twitter. Will it happen with Facebook, X, and like Instagram?
So yeah, again, I think Instagram tends to be one of the big winners in this because of the video
Mm-hmm.
capability. But the point is that, and back to the beginning when I said, look, this is a broader concern and issue that we should be addressing for all social media platforms, not just TikTok. And if TikTok is the first that leads to a broader way that we should manage these platforms, then okay, so be it. But yes, I mean, all of these platforms, again, not so much around the user data itself as
Mm-hmm.
far as, actual data, but it's the accumulated data and knowledge that you have and the control that you have, or these platforms have, of what people see and what's promoted in different circles and who are you interacting with and what the type of things that you're putting into that platform, how does that reflect on your sentiment, and what's making you angry
Mm-hmm.
and activating you versus not, and all of that is very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Very powerful information and knowledge that needs to be managed by us as a society. And we have some countries that don't even let children on these platforms until they're 14, 16 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it does, and there is clear research out there about how these social media sites impact childhood development and socialization. And I think we really need to take that on as a nation, and really figure out how to best use these tools versus have them abuse us.
So I know in the past there countries have like compelled these foreign-owned companies to host their servers in our country. Isn't that something that TikTok
Hmm.
is currently doing?
My guess that they would have done that, even if they weren't ordered to
Mm-hmm.
do that, because it's just something that is relatively easy to do, and they can check that box. But it doesn't. These again, these have been this has been going on, or for decades actually.
Mm-hmm.
This whole concept of data and where that data is stored and what can be transferred and all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. So, I don't know what their architecture is as far as the data. I assume they probably use this on servers, in the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. as a way to kind of counter this attack on them. But it's really, again, back to the beginning. Your personal data is so widely available, and we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of data items on people, as far as like home ownership and all, and where what they do and where they are,
Mm-hmm.
and all of this kind of stuff is out there.
All right.
So I just don't think it's a huge issue, but it is one that and the company that I had before, we did acquire client data in different countries, and many of those countries required us to we could aggregate that data, but we could only aggregate it in stores within their geographic
Mm-hmm.
boundary, and so we complied with that. But okay.
I think
you
the
know
biggest fear is probably, China's government essentially saying, like, technically they're stored there, but we want that information and we can access it because it's ours.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, well, yes, again, I think the user data thing is a red herring in the sense of like personal
Mm-hmm.
data. The user data and the algorithms that are driving, again, that content presentation are really the real key issues to me, and I think for the government. And so that's where it's not as clear cut, how much influence they have, a foreign adversary or foreign government, has over the company,
Mm-hmm.
to shape those algorithms and derive other information about users that we would not consider personal information, but are behavioral
Mm-hmm.
and what we call information, uh, in the information warfare, shaping that information environment so that people are presented and thinking in certain ways that are counter to the truth or
Right.
counter to social norms, whatever it may be. That those are the bigger issues versus personal information.
Yeah. So let's say the bill passes the Senate and it's signed by the president. What happens? Is the app just going to disappear from the Apple Store overnight? Or is that going to take some time?
Yeah, I mean, anything through the government takes time. So, number one, they have the option, right, to
To sell?
sell or get shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say they say, okay, we're going to throw in the towel or just shut us down. That would take time
Mm-hmm.
to ripple that through, but it would be fairly fast in the grand scheme of things process. We saw India do it in a pretty quick order. So banning, would go more quickly. Now they could say, well, we're going to search for a
Mm-hmm.
buyer. Give us time, right? So then you're back into the whole process of how much time is the government going to get them to not only find a buyer but structure the appropriate, governance of the
Mm-hmm.
company that the U.S. government is going to be able to support. So that could go on for months and quarters, and who knows,
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, to sort all that out. And so my guess is that would be the how the company would go down that route and basically delay and work through these issues,
Mm-hmm.
and on a very slow, no rush to get it resolved pace.
Just kind of slow, just to see if it'll just kind of fizzle out.
Well, it won't fizzle out, but this will give time, with a potential, change of
Mm-hmm.
administration, or more. They're obviously right now trying to get the user population, which is basically half the population of the United
Yeah.
States, has access to TikTok, to get more citizen angst and anger with legislators to change this. So time, as we've seen with Donald Trump, it's like, the whole legal system, you can play it like a fiddle and just delay, 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 and
Mm-hmm.
see how things evolve, and find, windows of opportunity through those delays. And that's what they would do.
I saw one article basically mentioning that, like, in search of finding someone to, buy or take ownership of TikTok in the US would be someone along the lines of like a Google or a Meta. Wouldn't that just kind
Hmm.
of violate these antitrust laws that we already have?
So I don't know about violate them. What it would do is basically, if, let's say, whoever the loser was in, if a Google or a Facebook or Meta acquired TikTok, then they could take an antitrust action against the new entity and start that whole process to try to force them to divest again.
Mm-hmm.
And so my guess is any tech company like that, whether it's X, whether it's any of them, would probably do some serious homework to kind of play that out, and figure out whether that they could actually survive an antitrust. I think, given the size of the players,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be pretty tough. If you didn't have Meta, and you didn't have Google out there, and you didn't have as far as X and that whole environment, it's hard to like say, well, they have like a monopoly
Right.
on this, right? But anyways, it doesn't mean they can't try and you know file an antitrust action.
Mm-hmm. So I know you've mentioned that this is definitely a bigger conversation to be had about social media in general. Um, but do you think that this is the right avenue to address these issues?
I so I guess the right avenue. Uh, if our government was working better, they should be taking this up. They were running around AI, and kind of came up with softball on that whole thing with
Right.
with the technology. I would say, I don't know what the actual numbers, but my general feeling is that over the decades, government batting against the technology giants is probably batting zero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've really passed any significant uh, governance or laws around how technology should be deployed and used within our society. And it's the stakes are higher now with generative AI and everything that's happening in AI and robotics.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to step back and say, how do we want this technology and these evolving and new technologies to be managed within our societies and our culture? And we need to take that on, and we should not be leaving it to politicians. We should have a national commission of people that actually understand this technology,
Mm-hmm.
and have even opposing views would be wonderful, and have the deep conversation, and have hearings that are open to the public, so the public understands what some of these key issues are, and the impacts of these tools and platforms, and potential future impacts, and get to the heart of it
Yeah.
rather than just slinging mud. So that's my take.
Well, I'm sure I can't convince you to get TikTok now.
No.
I've learned so much on
Well, I'm
TikTok.
not a big social media user. I think if it wasn't for LinkedIn, I don't think I'd have much of a social media world. So
Well, thank you so much, Bruce, for indulging me in this conversation. As you just said, you can
that's
find
it.
him on LinkedIn at Bruce McIndoe. Where else can people want to find you to
Or
continue?
just directly through WTCI and the team here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit the World Trade Center Institute online at WTCI.org for more insights, events, and opportunities. And make sure you follow us on all social channels at WTC Institute. See you next week.